The theory I've chosen is the reader's response criticism theory. I've chosen to set it up into three different categories: the reader's response theory, the history of it, and the reader's response in action. So the theory itself states that the story doesn't have a meaning till the reader creates one. So whatever meaning the author intended or was trying to show by his text and his words will change because the audience has all experienced different things from their culture, from the areas of born, from the type of education, just to day activities. So in theory, the readers will have different areas of experience that could connect them more to the story or less. And either way, they might be able to connect to stories with this experience that create a completely different meaning of the story, which means the book comes alive for that person themselves and doesn't and might lose the actual meaning of the writer's purpose. So the importance of this theory, if the audience is constantly changing over time because books last longer than people, it's very important for the writer to realize that the text could be interpreted different, or the writer's audience will have they have to be more focused on what that time period that the writer is actually writing in, because then they will get a different meaning. One connection I made to was in history we see the Bible example that the Bible says follow your master as you are the slave, and you have to respect them. And that sounds so wild to us as this, you're supposed to be doing the right thing, and then but you're following this dude who's forcing labor. But there's a huge difference between the slaves back then and the slaves now. The slaves back then, they had to they came in themselves technically, because they either borrowed money or they owed these people some kind of labor or item or something, and and as a punishment or to compensate for what they did, they have to find out that they have to do a certain amount of slave work and labor for the actual person till they can be redeemed. And then, but slaves now are we see them back in history, and sadly currently now these people are like taken from their homes, they're taken for these people's benefits, and they have a horrible life because and they didn't earn any of it. They are mistreated and deprived of humanity, and it's very sad. But you can see the difference in between, just because the time, it affects what the actual meaning is and what the writers and the audience see during that time, and the audience will be affected greatly on what they're reading if they don't understand what the writers actually are talking about. In the history of the theories, so it originated in New York by this one writer, and then now is mainly used in USA and Germany. The main theorists were Louise Rosenbelt. She was the writer who published the book Literature as Exploration, and this book was published in 1938, its first edition, and this first edition was like is when it originated and where this theory really came from, but it didn't really get realized till around 1960s by and a couple of these other theorists, Stanley Fish, David Blench, and Wolfgang Iser, are the ones that moved it forward. Stanley Fisher was definitely one of the main ones, I believe, to follow the theory forward. This is a quote from Stanley Fish. He says, "Any analysis generated by the assumption that meaning is embedded in the text itself will always point in as many directions as there are interpreters." So, as stated before, there are many different cultures, many different differences in humans, and each one's going to interpret it differently because that's the way we are. We all have different emotions and so when we read a book, one thing could be to someone where it's just moderate. It's not gonna happen to me, and one person might have actually lived through a traumatic thing that they can actually understand the feelings of the current character or in any way of that. So they will actually have a understanding of the book more or the book less in a sense. The reader's response, theory, and action. So I chose the short story Heavy Things by Julian Bowe. So a quick summary of it is this woman is having her period at a very young age, but the weird thing about her period is literally metal things and tools and like screwdrivers or bolts are being coming out at her period, and it increases the pain, of course, for her. But during this, she's getting barely any education from her parents or the school that she is in. She has no idea if this is normal or not. And then she also is also found to try get some medication, and then the doctor's like, you'll either like gain weight or like side effects of medication, and she's very like, this is insanely painful. I don't care if there's any side effects. I need this medicine. And the doctor didn't really want to prescribe it until she started saying, I'm gonna hurt myself if you don't give this to me now. So the doctor was forced to give the medication that he should have in the beginning, and then they find out the medication is increasing in price, and then she has no way to really buy this medication from a safe place, the prescribed place, so she has to try to get it from other places, and it's very dangerous and very unrecommended for someone to do that. So, but even for that, she still needed money to get this, so she won't be going through so much pain constantly, because bigger tools are coming when she's getting older. And at the end, she's begging her parents for this, and her parents are like, "You don't need this medication. You don't need it. It's a problem." And she's like, she finally tells the truth and what's happening, and the parents literally have this idea of, oh, Christmas is coming up or someone's birthday is coming up, and could you maybe get this certain tool so we can give it to them, which is insane because the imagine the pain that she's going through, and then have to beg her parents for money, and then learn that she wants to be used, even if it's painful, from her parents. So there's multiple meanings from the medicines that are expensive, the for people, so they have to do crazy things to get this medicine that's unsafe, or the human beings are just evil, and even you can't even trust your family in that kind of sense, or there's so much meanings and context you can take from society in this dark time for her, and it just shows like there's just so much that can be brought from the text as the audience reads this, and they don't know what the main point of could be. So it's for the audience to bring what meaning shows most of them, and I believe that's what a good example of the reader's response theory, because it shows a sense of difference in what's important to you and how you relate to it. And this is the resources that I used for finding this information on this subject.